Hello, it's Roger from MiWayJourneys. Today we're going to talk about planning for a 7-day adventure to Yellowstone National Park. Now, this is like no other of the national parks. It's all about what if, maybe, and what your choices of travel are. So let's start out by, my disclaimer. I'm not paid by anybody. I'm not affiliated with anybody as far as any products or services that I may recommend or use in the course of this journey. So, but just know that I do use these services and I count on them, and they've worked great for me over the years. So building on an idea. So where am I going to go? What is my destination? How much time do I have? Um, and then what do I want to see? And what are there any tour organizers or something like that that I may be able to leverage while I'm there, or maybe for the whole trip? But we may have to book some transport. Where are we going to stay as far as accommodations? And then just begin the journey and enjoy your trip. But I like to enjoy the trip in kind of in three phases. One is part of it is getting to know where I want to go. What am I going to do while I'm there? And then actually booking the travel. That's part one. Part two is doing the trip. And then part three is kind of going back and reliving the trip through using some mediums to, other than just pictures, to relive the trip. So let's kind of get into this. So today's destination is going to be the Yellowstone National Park, and I have this map up here with the grids and the major roads shown here. And this is an enormous park. My first caution would be is to not underestimate the size of this park. The distance between where these crosshairs or dotted lines are about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to get, from one side to the other part of the park. It is about 45 minutes to an hour. So, and there's really no rushing here. This is a national park, taking the beauty, the animals. You never know what you're going to see on any one of these roads at any given time. You're really kind of on the animals' time, so don't rush it when you're getting in there. So some research. I looked at some YouTubes, Instagram, TripAdvisor, the national park site to give me some idea of what to see, when to see. Determine, is this going to be a summer trip, a spring trip, or a winter trip in here. You can always use some Lonely Planet or Eyewitness books to do a little research to build up as to what do you want to do while you're there. So for me, as I've said before, keeping notes, I use the Wonderlog as a way to kind of keep track of the points of interest that I want to see. If you remember, I used this back in the Iceland trip as well, and I use this all the time to determine where, what do I want to see when I'm there. And then that allows me to kind of look at the plotted out points and say, all right, well, I've got about a day's worth of stops here or a day's worth of things to see here. So it's very helpful. It is, there is a cost to it, but, great application, great applet. So my decisions for this trip was to go during the summertime. I contemplated doing the winter, but that had its limitations. So during the summer, I went. I had about 7 days, and I had a small group of 5 people. I planned on renting some form of an SUV, something that would, service 5 people comfortably. The National Park Pass is about $80 for the annual pass, and that covers the people in the vehicle in itself. One find that we did use on this trip is called the Gapper Guide, and there's Yellowstone, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, but that was very helpful. Trade-offs to consider here when you're planning a Yellowstone visit is to stay inside the park, outside the park, camp in the park. Those are some decisions that you may want to consider when you're there. Staying in the park, at one of the lodges, you're talking about $300 to $400 a night. Some of the smaller, the teepees and yurt style pieces are a little bit less. And then, of course, if you either have a camper or have it or rent an RV, or you can even tent in the Yellowstone. So that depends on what your choice is. For this trip, I opted to use an Airbnb for the duration. Found a really nice place outside of the park, and it accommodated what we needed were the multiple rooms. So if we look at multiple bedrooms, you're talking about maybe 3 hotel rooms. You're talking, almost $900 a day if you stay on premises in one of the lodges. So a real cost consideration, but staying in the park means you take a lot of the travel out of it. So there are some trade-offs. So for me, we opted to stay outside because we knew we were going to do other things in the area, and this really afforded us that ability to do that. Some other cautions, depending on the time of year you go, are the park visitations during the summer months is going to be higher. You know, and for particularly to Yellowstone, plan for all weather, rain, sun, snow. When I visited the park in the middle of July, it snowed about 4 inches of snow. So you can imagine that had some impact on some of the things I wanted to do. Was just the snow in the higher elevations. Clearly a lot more snow, and so that made us kind of make some decisions based on that weather. So here's kind of the itinerary that I used for this trip. I flew into Bozeman, got a rental car there, and then we drove down to Big Sky. Found a really nice place off season. It wasn't ski season, so it was easy to find a rental. That worked perfectly for us. Then we spent a day in the park, 2 days in the park, and then we spent on day 4 we spent time going zip lining, and we did some trail riding out there, and we stayed on the west side of Yellowstone, so closer to right, we were north of West Yellowstone for this trip. Then we spent 2 more days in the park. We did some hiking. We did a number of things. So this really worked out for us to really break it down into these 4 days. And we spent, if you remember the original map, I was showing those quadrants. We kind of spent the time in those quadrants each day, and allowed us to take in, the park. Could have spent a lot more time. I do like to trek and do some hiking. We did get in both of those during these 4 days, but I certainly could have done more. For this trip, I would not try to pack in Yellowstone and Grand Teton, just one distances to just the amount of time. I mean, if you're going to go out there for 2 weeks, certainly you'll have the time for that. But for just Yellowstone, 4 days in the park, 5 days in the park, perfect. Plenty of time to see the animals, the scenery, and all the geologic features that are there at the Yellowstone Park. Just a fabulous park to be in. We did depart back out of Bozeman, so we kind of knew where we started, so we knew where we were going to finish. So that worked out really well. I mentioned the Gapper Guide. They do have a website you can go to. They have an applet that you can download. And then the trip information, they were $13. Well worth the information. And what's really nice is it's all based on GPS coordinates. So as you're driving in the park, the system will cue you. You can play the information. It'll be history or some geologic information or some information about the flora and fauna that you may be seeing. Really nice job done by the Gapper Guide team. And I've used these a couple of times in different parks. So I do recommend the product in itself, but they did work out really well. And while we were there in Yellowstone during our park visit, and I've provided here the URL for Gapper Guide in itself. You can take a look at that. As in the past, I do use a Track My Tour, so that way people back home, they can follow me while I'm doing my traveling, and again, it has an interactive. You can comment and chat in app, and people can see your travels on the map, see your pictures and your posts, and then like I said, you can communicate in app to those people that are following you. You can keep it private or public. It just depends on your choice. I keep mine private, and then I send the link to the people that I want to follow me during my tour or my trip, and it works great. And at the end, you can pull the whole thing together, and it creates a book that you can have printed, or you can just print the pages and then have a memento of the trip in itself. But nice product. Kind of some post-travel notes. Gapper Guide was excellent. We would have missed out on a lot of details and facts if we hadn't had something telling us kind of what we were seeing as we were driving along in any particular, and pointing out things that I didn't even find when I was doing my research. So very helpful to take that extra turn, as the guide recommends. We did a trail on one of the days. We did an out of park day. So we did a trail ride with an on trail barbecue. That was a lot of fun. Did some things. Not everybody had ever been on a horse in my group. So it was nice to get out and see some countryside and just see nature in itself. And then a barbecue in the wild is always a treat in itself. We went zip lining just a little bit south of Big Sky. And so that was nice group event, little team building, and we had some fun. And again, I had never been zip lining before, although I've done plenty of skill courses, but this was the first time I did such long runs on a zip line. So a lot of fun. We had a lot of group fun there. Do some short hikes, get out, see nature. It's kind of why, if you're opting to go to Yellowstone, you're looking for nature, flora and fauna, you got to get out of the vehicle and do some walking and see some geologic features and animals in the wild. Just really a beautiful park to do it. And as I said, plan some time out of the park. It's less driving. For me, I opted to stay outside of the park for just the economy, and that way we could have breakfast at our own pace. We would pack some lunches and do picnics during the day, and whenever we found a point to stop. And then dinners, we did a couple dinners in, and we ate out sometimes. So gave us a nice point to take in some of the local services, as well as just be home and not have to be rushing and on the go. Noteworthy, as I said, sections of the park are about 45 to 60 minutes apart, depending on traffic in the park or construction. So plan your time accordingly when moving through the park from one point to another. Keep your gas tank full all the time in this park. There's limited sources to get fuel in the park, and you may pay a little bit more for that when you're in the park in itself. Buy travel snacks. As I've said on other trips, when you get to where your destination is, go to a store, pick up some snacks, and pick up some stuff for lunches, and well worth your time once you're in the park. Plan for weather. You can always look at the map before you leave on your trip and maybe take fewer clothes. But I would say, you just never know. Plan on all kinds of weather, and particularly I was surprised at the weather, but we had layers, so we were able to layer up and do some hikes. Even after it had snowed, we were able to get out. On my next visit to Yellowstone, my plan is that the next time is to actually camp in the park. I think that's definitely a worthwhile experience, to be in the park and kind of just be stationary in one place. So whether that's renting something like a Class C or something like that, and then being able to still have a vehicle to get around in the park while you're there. You know. So watch my next YouTube on Yellowstone, and you'll see some of the history, some of the geologic features and things to see while you're in the park. But this was my planning to get me to go to the park. So I hope you found some of this helpful. You remember to either like and subscribe. I appreciate your patronage to my site. And if you have a comment, please put it down below. And I look forward to hearing you and seeing you in the next video. So thank you very much.